Hi, this is Shaptadeep from Hyundai Squad Canines. So today I'm going to be talking with you about one very important aspect of puppy rearing, which is toilet and potty training. So now, this also happens to be one of the major source of frustration and pain for thousands of first-time pet owners every year in India, okay, and also abroad. So, what exactly is it? How do you train your dog to relieve himself? How do you train your young puppy to relieve himself at a certain spot? So, in most homes, it's usually a spot like in the veranda or the toilet or the terrace. Okay, because definitely it adds to the comfort and also easy of letting your dog out in these as compared to taking your dog outdoors. So, guys, first of all, let's try to understand that what is the like why do puppies relieve themselves so frequently? So, let's say if you have fed your puppy a bowl of water and a little bit of meal, the kibbles, let's say, or any type of food that you might typically feed your puppy. So, when you feed your puppy that, the food and the water, what happens is that they tend to relieve themselves very often and preferably within a span of let's say half an hour to 1 hour, and they would relieve themselves frequently. And why that's so? Because puppies are typically very rambunctious and very energetic by nature. So something catches their mind, they just get distracted, go after it, and again come to a stop and again relieve themselves. Likewise, okay. So a lot of people ask me that how do we fix that, because the puppy is young, they have tried everything from like rolling up a newspaper and giving them a rebook to stop the puppy from leaving himself in a random spot inside the house, and to suggestions like keeping the cloth dipped in soaked in the puppy's pee and keeping it in the bathroom at a corner. Okay, so there are many such very generic suggestions that is usually propagated among the pet owners, usually by the other professionals in the field, like the groomers, the local groomers, or the handlers, or the veterinarian. Again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's everybody is speaking from their experience. Okay, so some of these nowadays I also see that more and more pet shops are pushing the sale of those napkins, those molly sheets to train your dog for toilet. Again, see, there's nothing wrong with it, it works for so many people, but in the longer run you have to understand that in the case of like molly sheets, the cases where the molly sheets are used, you have to understand that the puppy starts looking for that molly sheet only as a precursor or indicator of where to relieve. If they can't find it, they may get confused and may end up even relieving themselves around the house at random spots. Okay, so how do we typically address that? Because again, on one hand you would say that if my puppy doesn't have water, doesn't have a sip of drink throughout the day, then I mean they are going to be dehydrated, and if we do that, our puppy is ending up relieving himself 20, 25, 35, 50 times in throughout the day. So what is the way out? So let me share you with a very simple strategy. So typically what you could do is that, I mean, something that really works, I'm going to share you that. So what really works in most of the puppy case, in fact, if you're diligent enough, you'll be able to spot it out very fast and you'll be able to ace the toilet training of your puppy in less than 3 weeks time. So let's get started. The first one is that start feeding your puppy at fixed times. Typically the vets will suggest they keep a gap of like 5 to 6 hours or 5 hours and feed your puppy every 5 hours, which is fine, there is nothing wrong. But let's say for example you are feeding your puppy at 8 o'clock, um, 2 o'clock, and then again 8 o'clock, like that. So again, here in this case, for example, if we are feeding a puppy 3 times in a day, 8, 2, and 8, then typically I what we suggest is that mix an ample amount of water in the meal, okay, and remove the access of free access to water throughout the day. That doesn't mean that you should keep your dog dehydrated. At the same time, one very clear way of checking whether your dog is dehydrated or not is check the color of the urine. Okay, if it's clear, you don't need to worry about it. So what you could do is fix the timing. So why fix the timing, you may ask? So it gives you a very clear picture that, let's say, if you are feeding your dog, feeding your puppy, let's say 300 ml of water in the breakfast. So your puppy typically relieves around 4 to 5 times before the lunch time. If the puppy is having 300 ml of water, let's say, for example, your puppy relieves himself 4 to 5 times. So it gives you a very clear picture and clear idea how frequently does your puppy relieve himself. Okay, so now let's get back to like a more refined strategy. Okay, so let's say you feed your dog feed your puppy water in the breakfast, and you take your dog puppy out immediately to the bathroom or the balcony or the terrace. So you let your puppy walk around with you or play with you a little bit, slight very low intensity play, or just a bit of jumping around. So usually puppies will immediately relieve themselves after meal time. In some cases, puppies relieve themselves before the meal time. Again, you will know better because you have the puppy, you are living with the puppy, and you know the patterns of the toilet training. I mean, you know the patterns of when they relieve themselves, whether it's before the meal or after the meal. Okay, so just give me a second. Yeah. So after taking your puppy out, just set your timer on the stopwatch, and preferably half an hour after the first relief. Okay, so take your puppy out after every half an hour, and gradually you would come to understand that after the meal how frequently and what is the duration of the gapping between the two successive relieving. Okay, but again, as a golden standard or as a general benchmark, what we usually follow is take the puppy out every half an hour. Okay, and then there are certain timings throughout the entire day which you could really follow to ace it, because those are the timings which we call biological timings. So what do I mean by that? So biological timings mean there are certain very fixed timings where the body definitely wants to relieve itself. Okay, so what are those timings? The first one, right after getting up from sleep, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whenever that is. So whenever your puppy gets up after a nap or a long hour sleep or long night's sleep, first thing that you do, take your puppy out to the bathroom, okay, washroom, and or the terrace, so your puppy can relieve himself. That's the first rule. Second is after the meal, once your puppy has had a very fulfilling and heavy meal, take him out. He would relieve himself. Okay. Third one, right after a playtime. So you have been playing for like 5 to 7 minutes, and suddenly you would see that your puppy disconnects from you and moves away from you, or preferably goes off to sniffing, starts sniffing and moves to another room for a few seconds. So don't treat it as something that your puppy is distracted. Keep an eye out that your puppy may be indicating that he has got to relieve himself. Okay, so these are the basic timings, the basic biological timings. Okay, and another thing that you could also take help of is the reading of the body language. So there are times when your fur puppy gets abnormally, like, very playful at odd hours, typically at the certain hours where your puppy usually rests or engages in very low intensity activities, or let's just simply rests. And suddenly at the during those times, you see that your puppy is getting super excited and super playful out of nowhere. Preferably he is getting a zoomies. Watch that time out. You simply take your puppy out for relieving at the spot. There's a very high chances your puppy wants to relieve himself. Okay, that's the first one. And again, there's another body language that you should ideally be looking out for is, if your puppy wants to relieve, he'll immediately put his nose on the ground and start sniffing around, and usually in a circular pattern, or sometimes some puppies simply start sniffing extensively. So take that cue, take your puppy out. Even if he doesn't relieve himself, that's fine, not an issue, but take him out. Okay, so in this way, the more frequent times your puppy goes out and relieve himself in a certain spot, let's say 7 out of 10 times, or 8 out of 10 times, or 9 out of 10 times even, so that thing is going to make sure that your puppy learns where to relieve himself. Okay, so once you're able to establish throughout the day, that your puppy is able to relieve himself 7 out of 10 times, 70 to 80% of the time, you can start giving a light correction on his butt, or in general just, hey, no, and say pop, and then simply discourage and immediately take him out. Okay, so these are the classic signals that the puppies, most dogs would follow that. And then there's another situation where, which I frequently get to hear from pet owners, which is that I know my dogs, I know my puppy's toilet timing and potty timing, and I take him out. And what he does is that the puppy will wait and sleep around in the bathroom. Okay, and when we think that sometimes it can even be 40 minutes at a stretch, or 1 hour at a stretch, and the moment we step out of the bathroom, the puppy relieves himself. Okay, so in this type of situations, what I typically suggest is that, take your puppy to the bathroom and washroom at that, the timing. So at that designated time, just take your puppy out to the washroom and engage in a little bit of banter, a little bit of play and slight jumping around. So what that does is it puts pressure on the puppy's bladder, and which encourages him to relieve himself. Okay, so this is something that you might want to check, try out, because it works very good. Okay, and the another strategy that I typically use, that fill up the puppy's bowl of meal with generous amount of water. It puts a lot of pressure on the puppy's bladder, and they would relieve themselves through pee and potty once you let them out into the washroom or wherever. So don't keep saying karo 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 karo, relieve yourself, have toilet, do toilet, do toilet. No, just shut up and now simply take your puppy out. He will relieve himself. So again, this is something that would come very handy to you, and this will make sure that your puppy is toilet trained within a span of roughly 2 to 3 weeks flat. And again, remember one thing: once your puppy gets habituated to the idea, once your puppy gets toilet trained to a larger extent, you could start giving out access to the water 24/7, but not before that, because if you do that, you are going to have a harrowing time fixing that habit. Okay, now let's talk about the toilet training of adult dogs. Now, usually what happens is that adult dogs, in some cases, when they come back from a short stint at a dog boarding, they may come back home and you may see just aberrations in the habit. So they may start relieving themselves on the bed sometimes, or let's say at random places. So the quickest and easiest way to fix that, and which is take your dog outdoors. Okay, which again the general solution that we do ask of people who have habituated their dogs, I mean whose dogs are habituated to relieving themselves inside the house for like longer time, and the dog has become older, and it's literally hard to teach the dog how to differentiate between which is the right spot and which is the wrong spot and thousands of other things. Okay. And again, the going back to the first situation where your dog comes back from a stint at a dog boarding, and suddenly your dog is relieving himself here and there. So again, I would suggest fall back on the first solution that we discussed regarding the puppies. Give your dog food at very fixed times, and put your dog in the washroom. They will relieve themselves, but make sure you fill it up to the brim. You load their bladder through a lot of water in the meal. Okay, so that is something that works every single time, no matter the age of the dog. Okay, and so again, this is something that might want to consider. But if your dog is very much adamant of not relieving himself inside the washroom, my classic and golden suggestion for you would be take your adult dog out for a small walk, and let him sniff around, let him explore the areas. He will automatically relieve himself, because they are dogs and they relieve themselves wherever they find good smell. So that's a classic way to get your adult dog toilet trained. Okay, so I hope that helps you train your dog and succeed with your dog. Thank you and have a nice day.